Welcome back to day 2. I'm Ben and this is Dirk, and we are Whiskey Rickhouse. Today we are coming on our second stop of our Caribbean trip from St. Lucia.
You know, St. Lucia is the only country in the world with the distinction of being named after a woman. Imagine that. St. Lucia of Syracuse.
Interesting. And it was very difficult to colonize St. Lucia, and the Carib Indians, which, if you're a beer fan and maybe not a rum fan, you can find that on the island as well, were the indigenous inhabitants there. And it went from the Dutch, the French, and the English, changed hands multiple times.
Yeah, it was tough. The Indians didn't want any of the Europeans moving in, that's for sure. The most noticeable landmark on the island is the Baton Mountains. And they're absolutely beautiful. I mean, they also have a beer named after that, the Baton beer. It's really good. It's a lager, I believe. The other thing to note is St. Lucia did not actually become a fully independent country until as late as 1979.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy. So the rum we've selected is the Chairman's Reserve Forgotten Casks. The Chairman's Reserve is distilled by the St. Lucia Distilling Group, which was founded in 1972. Unfortunately, in 2007, a fire ravaged their campus, destroying the administration building as well as their blending facility.
Well, as you can imagine, with any fire or disaster, things have to get moved around, placed in unusual places, and some of those were the Chairman's Casks. So recently, some of these casks were uncovered, which brings us today to the Chairman's Reserve Forgotten Casks that we're tasting.
Yeah, so this was done in limited release because there were very few casks that were actually forgotten. Our whiskey fans will be interested to note that this particular rum is aged in barrels that they received from Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, as well as Buffalo Trace. These are all white oak American barrels, and after they're aged, they're then blended together and then reintroduced into the barrels for additional 5 years of aging before release.
So Dirk, what do you think of this one?
Now, we talked about early on some of these rums are not made for sipping. This one is extremely smooth, and I actually I can enjoy this one by itself. I like it a lot. I think there's a kind of a raisiny note to it, a little bit of fruit sweetness that I really enjoy, and I could drink this. I could drink this with no problem at all.
I agree with what you said there. It's much smoother, not very hot at all. It goes down, no real burn at all. Get some of those fruits in there, not as much as spice notes as the last one being the clove, Caribbean spice you'd think of for the rums. But I could drink this on its own, or as we're doing on this series, in a mixed drink.
Yeah, so the featured cocktail for this particular rum we've decided is a Tropical Painkiller.
And in the Whiskey Rickhouse style, we've done a few things to make this our own. Being here in Texas, we like things a little spicy, so we added some pinches of cayenne pepper to our painkiller, which may be painful. And then we also grated a little bit of clove over the top with the nutmeg to add a little bit more of that Caribbean spice to it.
Very nice. Can't wait to try it.
Now that we have our Tropical Painkiller in hand here, I'm going to give this a little bit of a sip.
Very nice. Cheers.
Cheers. And see how our concoction turned out for Whiskey Rickhouse. See how our little additions here of the little back-end spice, that cayenne pepper is in the back of the throat there, not too spicy, and the nose on just that clove with the nutmeg, freshly ground nutmeg, even from that little the nut there is just
absolutely
amazing.
Beautiful. And keep in mind, guys, the recipe calls for 4 ounces of alcohol, but if this turns out that you don't have that much pain to cover up, you can reduce the alcohol content and bring it down just a little bit. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thank you very much for joining us. Our next stop is going to be Antigua. We'll see you then.
Bye.